Welcome to HR Unfiltered.
Cool. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here today with Careen. She has done almost everything that our job and in our industry has to offer. And Careen has spent over 20 years in the people space, started in recruitment, then built her own agency and a fractional HR consultancy. And after some time, let's say in 2023, co-founded Humaneer, where she is now CEO. And it's an AI platform. I won't talk a lot about it. I will ask you, Karin, to share more about it. But still, it's a platform that promises to take off the admin and give more impact for HR. Built by HR for HR. And yeah, today we're getting into the question everyone in our field is quietly stressing about. What does AI actually change for HR? What's hype? And what actually should we stop doing manually, like yesterday? Karin, welcome to HR Unfiltered.
Thank you.
I've done my best, but please tell us in your own words, who are you and what are you doing now?
You did really well describing my background. So I did. I started in recruitment and then moved into people and culture. And my most recent experience was leading global teams in deep tech and technology in startup, scale up, hyper growth environments. I don't think I've done everything in HR. I think that's impossible for one person to ever do because every situation is so nuanced. But yet now I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of Humaneer. And Humaneer for us was really about two things. The first one was in HR, it can be very isolating as in the role. And it was like, well, how do we build connection? And so we built a community. And then it was, well, how do we actually operationally make our roles easier, I suppose? And that's where Mac, our AI platform, came in. And so we built I believe, the world's first AI note taker. And we've been in market for nearly 12 months now with that. We've saved HR teams in Australia and New Zealand nearly 5 working years of work through our platform. Probably the biggest differentiator is our whole platform, Mac, is underpinned by real-time legislation and compliance. So it's not guessing, it's constantly drawing on real-time legislation.
Awesome. That sounds amazing. I can't even imagine saved 5 years. Like, unbelievable so far.
Honestly, we were so stoked when we saw the figures coming in. We were like, that's 5 years that HR teams have got back to do change management, which is so important right now. It's 5 years they've got back to increase management capability. It's huge. It's huge.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, how you track everything and how it evolves in the future. But yeah, let me also ask you something that we've discussed when we first spoke. You described HR as a bit like a fight club. And so what happens inside stays inside, right? So what did you actually mean by that? And how did you feel about being a senior at a senior level?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I do refer to HR like being in Fight Club. What happens in Fight Club stays in Fight Club. I think that when you're at the senior level in HR, and actually any level, what happens you can't really talk about. So if you've got colleagues in other parts of the business, you can't sit down and have a cup of tea with them and tell them about your day per se, because so much of what we work with is within the confidentiality piece. So that's why I talk about what happens in Fight Club stays in Fight Club. And that's where that isolation can start. And the more senior you become, the smaller the room becomes that you're in. And so the less you can talk about. So that's where I come from with that isolation point.
And that's also something that you are solving at the moment, right? Like being not isolated, you have a community and everything. So yeah, that's definitely helpful for HR professionals. And also, like something that you mentioned at the very beginning, like you've been in HR for 20 years across multiple industries. So, what does HR look like now compared to when you just started? is it even recognizable?
Yeah, it's so different. And I think that if we think about the evolution of HR, so HR kind of started as a place of admin, and then it became a place of policies and compliance. And then it became a place of strategy and people and culture and the human aspect. Then it became people experience and working much more in a product focused way. And now we're looking at AI augmentation. So while I didn't start at the beginning of HR in its evolution, I probably came in at that people and culture point where we were seeing a massive increase in best place to work and awards, and really that employer branding piece started becoming really important. Whereas now we've gone through that evolution into people experience, and we're now into the AI augmentation. So when we actually think about it like that, and in the amount of time I've been in HR, that's huge. But also, these things have been stacked on top of our roles. So our capacity hasn't changed, but the capabilities required to do our jobs effectively, the expectations have gone up with every sort of transition. So when I look at HR now compared to when I was in HR years ago, there is so much more on the HR plate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely agree. Even like when I just started, it was 8+ years ago, something. Even back then, we still had some of like HR was perceived as an more as an admin, but now what I'm seeing, it's like a business partner, right? A strategic partner who sits in most cases, let's say, in the like table with all the business leaders, and you actually have to understand how business operates and stuff. So yeah, that's also amazing to see this
Yeah.
evolution.
Absolutely. And you can see it through the job titles. That's the fastest way to see the evolution is, like 15, 20 years ago, everybody was HR, like HR and chief HR officer. Whereas now there's a much bigger movement to people. So it's, people consultant or chief people officer. So I think we see a lot of the evolution in the job. And I know everybody argues about what HR should be called. And I don't think it matters. I think just do your job. It's fine. But we can see it through the evolution of what we've been called as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And also, just a couple of more questions on Humaneer. So, where did it actually start? Also, when we first spoke, you mentioned that you worked with mathematician to check if it's even possible, the idea. So, yeah, and just talk about it a bit more because I'm super curious. So, where it started, and when it started, there wasn't still AI as per se as we have it now. So, how did it all happen?
Gosh, AI has changed so much over the last sort of 2.5, 3 years. So when we first had the idea for what Mac could become, we knew the part of the role that we wanted to solve, and we were like, it's the admin side. It's so document heavy. We spend so much time behind our desks instead of with people. Every meeting has to be documented. We have to check legislation before we do anything. We have to sense check everything. The legislation changes so much that we need to be constantly on top of it. And that was the stuff that we were like, this really takes our time, but can we solve it? So we actually were like, well, we need to solve the hypothesis in the theory. And actually, that was a mathematician at that stage. So it was somebody who could understand the models and say, well, is this theoretically possible what we want to do? And so we worked with him, and he was like, yeah, theoretically it's possible. And that was when we decided to give it a go, if you like, and see if we could do that. I will say that the Mac we created back then compared to where Mac is now is very different. It was a bit of a process getting to where it is just now. But again, the technology has been moving so quickly as we've been building that even if I look at Mac, our product 6 months ago, compared to the product we're now in testing with, it's a completely different product. The technology is different, the back end's different. And that's just been because the capabilities increased now, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and also touching on this, so you went from is this even possible to nearly 100 customer organizations, right? So what that version 1 did you?
Yeah, so we're still on version 1 just now. And it's actually a massive week for us because version 2, we got our first customer testers in this week to start testing. Oh, so it's really exciting.
Congrats.
Thank you. There've been lots of celebrations online this week. Look, that journey's been a huge one. There was so many learnings from version 1, and version 1 was really about us. Our hypothesis was, can HR trust AI in high stake moments? Can we trust
Mhm.
it? And we've proven that's a yes. And so version 2 was like, well, let's actually address a much bigger problem, which is around visibility. Because, you work in HR, by the time something lands on your desk, that's the outcome. It's not the situation. It's somebody who feels they've been mistreated. It's somebody who feels like they've been hard done by, or a manager's spoken to them incorrectly, or a process hasn't been followed. So usually by the time it gets to us, it's reached a critical mass point. And so with Mac version 2, we wanted to see if we can get the risk mitigated before it comes to HR. And so that as well means, I don't know if you've ever felt like this, but HR can feel quite reactive because, you know, can I have a quick 5 minute chat with you is never a 5 minute chat. It's like, what's happened? And so we were like, if we can actually mitigate that risk before it becomes an outcome, we can start to be much more strategic, and we can also have visibility on that risk as well. So that's where we're going with Mac 2.
Amazing. I need to follow the updates for sure.
You do. I'm going to be talking about it a lot on LinkedIn, now that we can talk about it, because we've been, honestly, the last sort of 4 months, it's been heads down in product and customers, and it's really nice to be able to come up for air now and be able to shout from the rooftops about it.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. All right. So I'm sorry, so many questions, but I will try, to stop myself from asking all of them.
After
So,
all,
yeah, just another one also about Mac. So, coming back to something that you mentioned also in the beginning. So, HR doesn't just happen in the HR department. So, does it matter for how you build Mac? And if yes, why and how?
yeah, so that comes back to our learning over the last year. So we initially built Mac for HR professionals, and it was to help
Mhm,
us free up time to be able to do more meaningful work. So that was what Mac version 1 was. But we realized that all of this reactive response piece
mhm,
was actually really affecting the day to day. And a lot of HR doesn't happen in the HR department, it happens at the manager level. And so we could solve the piece with the admin and the repetitive tasks with HR, but the reactivity would still be there from what had happened in the organization. And so that was a learning for us because we thought that the problem with HR was capacity, which a lot of it is, but actually the problem is visibility in organizations of what's happening. And so that was a real journey for us and has completely changed how we think about the problem we're solving now.
Yeah, I definitely agree because sometimes, even some situations, as you mentioned, not even like situations outcome already, in some cases, it even like never reaches HR.
Yeah,
It stays somewhere on the manager's plate, and yeah, it's just a lot and impossible maybe to track everything. And then, yeah, you just have to react to it when you actually learn about the case, the situation that just happened. So, yeah,
absolutely. And usually by then it's a volcano,
yeah,
so it might just have been like a tiny little molehill, but molehill where we could have like coached and mentored and helped with that situation. But by the time we're seeing it, it's Vesuvius and it's going off, and you know, all hell's broken loose. And we're just like, okay. And it's usually a Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. as well, just for the record, that usually happens. But again, it's just about getting in before that happens.
yeah. We all need it for sure, like something that would help us as Mac. Also, like touching on AI piece. When we first spoke, you said something interesting. You said that AI conversation is actually dangerous right now. And yeah, can you just explain that? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, so look, I think that, yeah, AI can be dangerous. Of course, it can be dangerous in the wrong context. So, for
Mhm.
example, and I think there's lots of, I think AI is phenomenal. So, I'm just going to caveat with
Yep.
that. But there are risks. So, for the first time, I think in human history, everybody has access to a tool that they can access for free. And so that changes the game completely, because that means that everyone has access to what they could deem as legal advice or as
Mhm.
employment advice for free on their phone. So that in itself is one piece. The other piece is what AI can generate now. It can generate some really incredibly realistic documents, which again in HR we've got to be really wary about, because we don't want to ever think that someone's coming with a falsehood to us. But so we need to get better at the judgment piece to be able to analyze quickly what's true and what's false. And I think there's things we can do with that. The other danger with AI is AI seepage of people uploading documents, because
Mhm.
or they've got an email from a manager, they think the manager's bullying them, they just upload a screenshot of the email. AI now has the manager's name, the manager's email, the conversation. So that's when I talk about the dangers of AI, it's more around what it could be used for and the sheer magnitude of availability of AI. The other danger with AI, and I think I saw something about it today on LinkedIn, is that AI adoption is not great. It's not
Yeah.
what people expected. And maybe perhaps some of that is the rhetoric around AI taking people's jobs. So why are people going to adopt a technology that ultimately is going to replace them? There's no psychological safety there. So that's another danger with AI as well, is the psychological safety. So when I talk about AI is dangerous, it is in a lot of context,
Mhm.
so an incredible tool if done correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of also like done correctly, so many examples when companies try to implement AI, like some processes. I don't know. Let's talk about recruitment, for example, AI screenings, etc. But in reality, like most of those cases and companies that I see, they don't think about the problem they're trying to solve. They are just, trying to build something or implement AI in their build an AI in their workflow without actually, understanding just because of like it's hype, so we have to do it, but without actually digging into the problem that they're trying to solve. So, and that's also like it's frustrating then for both companies and for candidates if we're talking about recruitment process, because then you can't hire fast enough without human judgment, without human in the loop. And for candidates, they're when I talk to them, they're so frustrated because they have they got no responses, like nothing. They even can't land any interviews. And that's dangerous, I think, for the society.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, gosh, there was so much to unpack in what you just said there. So the first one is, excuse me, is not knowing what problem you're solving. So
Mhm.
if you don't understand what you're going to solve, every technology you look at is going to look amazing, because you're like, wow, it can do this, it can do this, because you actually don't know what you're trying to do. And I would say that AI is one solution out of many solutions. It's a tool. And so when you actually define your problem properly, you can start looking at what the possible solutions are. And AI might be one of them, but it might not be the full solution. So that's why I always say you need to understand the problem statement first and what you're solving. The second one for me is I'll put something to you. So if you give someone Excel, you don't actually think that they're financially literate.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what we're doing is we're giving people AI tools, and we're thinking that's AI adoption, and it's not. Like, because we're not building the capability around the tools. We're basically giving them Excel on steroids and expecting them to do amazing things, but actually they haven't got the capability around the tools. And the tools will change. That's a given. Technology is moving so quickly. So if we don't build that capability, that's where we start to see AI doing the tasks that people do in their roles. And right now, a lot of them are tasks. But once you have enough tasks that the AI can do, that is the role. And then that's what I see the problem being, is we're not building capability to uplift the humans to carry on with the technology. And then the other one you mentioned, which was on the recruitment side, we had such a good discussion about this on a panel the other day. You've got a huge influx of AI generated CVs coming in, AI reading the AI CVs. And so what we've actually done is we've created a critical mass from both sides. I think it'll be really interesting, and it's not my field, so there may be somebody doing it already, but it'd be really interesting to see somebody can solve that problem, because they're still going to use AI to generate their CVs, and companies are still going to think that AI is the answer for screening. So that one for me is actually a really interesting use case for AI in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, like coming to the point that you mentioned, that it's about also creating these capabilities and uplifting the team, like everyone on the company side, right, to use it properly as
Yeah.
well. Not just to use it because of the sake of it, but to use it actually properly. And if we are talking about HR, so what this problem might look like for HR teams in practice? So with AI.
Yeah, look, I think HR are really feeling it now. There's so many things now that we didn't even have to think about 5 years ago. So for example, one that I'm really interested in is we're creating digital twins of people in organizations. So whether that is their workflows, whether that's their thinking rationale, whether that is even their avatar of them, their voice, etc. When they leave, who owns that if it's been built? So that's one that I think is quite an interesting use case. The other one is fake documentation. So medical certificates, receipts, doctor's notes, that sort of thing. We never had to navigate that before, but I think that's one as well. And then the other one that we've heard a lot about in our community is disputes and grievances coming in. And instead of it being an email where somebody would outline what happened with a bit of a timeline, people are getting 15-page documents written by one of the big LLMs citing case law and very, very sort of legal speak. And so now HR teams are having to actually work through that and work out what was right and what actually happened. And in one case, we actually had somebody who it had been submitted, but the case law didn't exist that was cited in the thing. So that's 3 examples of things that didn't exist before AI. I'm quite sure there's going to be hundreds more as we navigate through it, but that's 3 ones that come immediately to mind to me.
Yeah, I've been also thinking about like if AI is not used properly, then for example, HR would use LLM, any of them, to work on some also compliance cases or whatever, and they can also pull the information from their CRM system into this LM, and then there is a data leakage and everything. So yeah, we have to be like, AI is amazing. Yeah, it's for sure, but we have to be very careful in that also on how we use it and what data we are actually like giving it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's not just HR, it's managers as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Because we're seeing a lot more where managers are jumping onto AI on their phone because they're like, oh, how do I deal with this situation? And AI very confidently tells them how to deal with it, and it's wrong. And so they're doing what they think is right. But then if it escalates, the process is wrong. And that for me is actually one of the key things with HR around grievances and complaints, is that the one thing that we can control is the process, because we can control the audit trails and what actually happens when somebody makes a complaint. And I think that's really critical. And that's a key human capability right now. When you asked at the beginning, like, what should we be doing and what should we not be doing? Judgment is probably one of the biggest ones.
Absolutely. Nothing even to end here. Okay, and yeah, one question that is super, I would say, hype now. Like everywhere you hear that AI will replace recruiters, AI will replace HRs. So will actually AI replace HR professionals or will it free them?
I think it depends on the HR professional, if I'm being honest.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So I think it has the ability to take huge parts of our roles away. And this is where I
Mhm.
talk about that capability piece, because if
Yeah.
somebody just sits using AI can do a lot of tasks right now. It can't do our full role, but it can do a lot of tasks. And what we don't want to get to the stage is where the AI can do more than 50% of our tasks if we've not built the capability around what we do next. So,
Mhm.
because then as the AI starts going up in the task list, we're actually increasing our capability as well. Do I think the role of HR will look the same in 2 years' time? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And it's exciting because I think it's going to look
Mhm.
probably a bit like we all thought it was going to look when we got into HR. I think that's probably going to happen because I think it's going to be far more focused around human connection, change management, transformation, strategic business alignment, growth and development, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, percent here. Also super excited. Even have my goosebumps here when we talk about it. So yeah, for sure. I agree. I feel like it's just a matter of the person itself, let's say. So will you let it replace you or not? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Okay, and also a very personal, let's say, question. So, what do you wish someone told you when you just became a founder?
Gosh, so much, so much. I don't think we talked about our product
Mhm,
enough before we launched it. I think we were so worried that somebody might do the same thing that we didn't really talk about what we were doing. And so if I was to do something differently, I would probably build in public a bit more and be a bit more open and bring people on that journey. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
Which
Very
is
good
ironic
point.
because, sorry, it's so ironic because we built the community like that, but we didn't build our product like that.
Yeah, because it's always, I think, we have this fear that someone might steal it, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, we just don't want it to happen. So it's quite, yeah, very good point here. But yeah, I think it might be risky as well to share a lot.
Absolutely. And look, I think we did the right thing, but I think if I was to get advice, that would be it. The other
Mhm,
thing as well is because I think really differently about it now, which is really interesting, where I think that if somebody is going to do what you're doing, you've already done that part and you're on to the next part. So they're going to be catching up. And that's also real validation for your product as well. So I think
mhm.
about it differently now than I did as a new founder, which I think is really natural.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And also, like, best piece of advice that you got but ignored.
Or whenever I've had good advice, I've taken it. One of my biggest things I've learned being a founder is that I want to learn to make new mistakes. I don't want to make the same ones that other people have made. So I do surround myself with second time founders and people who are further on in the journey. And I do ask them, I'm like, what would you do in this situation? And more often than not, they're like, when I did this happened. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to make that mistake. So I'm going to do this instead. I'll find my own mistakes over here. I don't want to repeat them. And that's been really critical for us. What advice have I got that I've ignored? Do you know, when it comes to HR, I've probably had a few situations where I've thought I've probably given people the benefit of the doubt when
Mhm.
actually, and it was to my own detriment. I think in HR land, that's probably the biggest piece of ignoring, is when somebody says that's not worth your time, and you're like, no, no, I want to help. So that would be earlier in my career.
Yeah, I know. I
I've
know.
actually I've got another really good one for you from
Oh,
when I
wow.
was in HR. So when I was in HR, I remember people telling me to stop because I was exhausted, and I
Mhm.
didn't, because I felt like everyone relied on me. And so that's probably the biggest piece of advice that I've ignored, is to take a step back and rest, because it's sometimes really difficult in HR to step away because you think that perhaps something won't happen or somebody won't be looked after. So that's probably my biggest regret.
Oh, I feel it so badly. Yeah, oh, I think we've all been there, and yeah, it's difficult. It's really difficult, and that's an amazing advice. And I love that you mentioned that, because yeah, it just resonates.
Yeah.
I feel with every single HR professional, like maybe not junior, but
Mm.
who knows? Yeah. So, but yeah, ah, can't even breathe.
Oh, do you know, when I was moving house, I we had a big sort of growth spurt when I was moving house, and this would have been, gosh, years and years ago. And I was standing with the removalists, and they were packing boxes into the van, and I had my laptop on top of the boxes working because I felt like I couldn't close my laptop. So the whole time I
Mhm.
was moving, I was online. And I look back on that now, and it's like, what was so important that you couldn't take 3 hours off to move house? And I can't even remember what I was doing. So it clearly wasn't that important, you know? That's just one example.
Yeah, I also got some more examples. Like, I was going to a hospital and working there while waiting for the appointment. And yeah, a lot of things. And yeah, that just like, I don't even remember what I was working on,
Yeah.
So that wasn't that important. But back then, I felt that I can't just stop because they need me, everyone needs me and stuff. And now looking back, I'm like, it could have been solved without me being there, or it could have waited for me. So,
Yeah.
yeah, very relatable.
Yeah.
All right. So, yeah. And I want to, let's say, wrap up this conversation on a more positive note. If you were to recommend one thing to HR professionals that want to start or want to become a founder now, so what would it be? What this piece of advice would be?
Just do it. We live in the best time to start a company. You don't need to hire staff right away. You can use AI, you can use agents. I would say, if you've got an idea, do it at the weekends, test it, just build a prototype and test it. What I love at the moment that we're seeing in HR is a lot of people are using tools like Lovable, etc., to test ideas. And so that would be my one bit of advice. It's like, if you have an idea, test it, build a prototype, test it with your HR friends or whoever your market is, and just try it. You've got nothing to lose except maybe some hours at the weekend. And on a positive, it might make you stop thinking about work. So it's a win-win. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much once again for your time, for sharing your experience. It was a real pleasure talking to you and like just having this conversation. I learned a lot from this. Anything that you'd like also to share about the conversation itself, or maybe the community, or again, the product?
So I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you. And I do appreciate that you've got up early to do this because I'm in Australia. So thank you. It's not gone unnoticed. Look, our community is global, and we would love to welcome any of your listeners into it. And you can pop the details underneath.
Yeah.
But it's really important we have these conversations, and we do cross borders across the globe and connect with each other and learn from each other, because technology can solve a lot of operational problems, but I think that community is going to be the thing that we all lean on to learn and grow and support each other. So that's probably what I'd leave with.
Yeah, absolutely. And community also helps us not to experience the same mistakes as you mentioned all over again.
Yeah.
All right. Again, thank you so much and have a great day.
You too.
Welcome to HR Unfiltered.